Good afternoon, and welcome to the USDA Food Safety Outreach Technical Assistance. I am Dr. Angela Shaw. This was granted by the USDA Food Safety Outreach Grant Program. We are within the technical assistance area of the grants. Texas Tech University, Alabama A&M University, and Iowa State University were awarded the USDA Food Safety Outreach Grant, or USDA FSOP, Technical Assistant Grant. It is titled Empowering Minority Serving Institutions Food Safety Specialists to Write Successful Food Safety Outreach Program Grants through Education, Training, and Technical Assistance. Our number is 2023-70020-40631. We want to thank the USDA NIFA Association. This is our team. I am Dr. Angela Shaw, professor at Texas Tech University. We have Dr. Armitra Jackson-Davis, associate professor at Alabama A&M University. Dr. Shannon Coleman, also associate professor, Iowa State University. And we have Christine Strom. She's with the engineering science editors. The agenda for today is we will walk through the RFP and the content and show you how to extract important information. We will share with you a project narrative template as an example as you go forward. The first step is let's walk through the RFP. I am turning it over now to Christine Strom to take us away. Christine, would you like to go through the RFP?
Sure. Thank you, Angela. I shared my screen with you, and you see the request for applications by the USDA. First page tells us how much time do we have to prepare. We have to submit on February 13th, so that gives us plenty of time, although there is the holidays, but it is a doable time frame to write a fundable proposal. I will go through now and show you what I look at when I extract information that I need to write a good, compelling, convincing, and complete proposal. First thing we need to think about is, are we eligible? Eligibility is detailed in this section of the RFP. Eligibility requirements. It lists everybody who can apply to this grant program. And when you go through this, you see it's basically everybody other than for-profit entities, companies. Basically anybody else can apply, but if you're not sure whether you fall into any of these categories, please contact the program manager and get their advice. They're extremely knowledgeable. You can rely on their advice, and they're extremely helpful. Now, once this has been cleared up, you're eligible. We have to look at what does this program want to fund? And that is clearly spelled out in the executive summary, where it says they want to fund projects that develop and implement food safety training, education, extension, outreach, and technical assistance projects that address the needs of owners, operators of small to mid-sized farms, beginning farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, small processors, veteran farmers or ranchers, small fresh fruit and vegetable merchant wholesalers, all of whom are affected by the food safety guidelines established under the Food Safety Modernization Act. And later, when we go through this in detail, we will explain what that means for you. Now that we know what we have to address, the priorities that the USDA wants to fund in this funding cycle, we go and check what kind of projects are being funded. And that first part is addressed here. Following types of projects or grants are eligible for funding: community outreach projects, collaborative education and training projects, regional center projects, and technical assistance grant writing skill projects. That is just a one line explanation of what they want to fund, but they will explain in more detail what that means. And we find that actually above this section under program area descriptions. And here for every project type, they give a detailed outline what they expect projects under these headlines to address. They tell you what the program code is, which you need for your filling out the forms for your application. They tell you how long they will fund a project, and they tell you how much money they're willing to fund. And that varies for each project type. So you have to make a decision on what kind of project you want to address here, and then look at what it means for you to what you have to put into your proposal. The next thing we want to address, and we go back to our table of contents, because that's hyperlinked, thank you, technology, we can jump to different sections and find out find the information that we need to write the proposal. Next thing I look for is what is the space I have to explain what I want to do. Why do we ask that question to begin with? And my reason is, and I explain that to my PIs, you know what you want to do, but that doesn't necessarily match what the funding agency here, the USDA, wants to pay for. So you have to be aware of their priorities and of their requirements in the narrative to kind of tailor and adjust what is in your mind to meet what they expect. So first thing, how much space do we have? We look at the project narrative, and it says for community outreach projects, technical assistance, we have 10 pages, 12-point fonts, including tables and figures. And for the collaborative education projects, regional center, lead center, we have 20 pages, 1.5 lines spaced, 12-point font. That tells us the space that we have. Now, in this part, they also tell us what we must include in the narrative, and that's these headlines: an introduction, a rationale and significance, objectives, approach, a summary of previous work, not necessarily funded through the USDA, but work that addressed a similar problem and similar target groups. And if you submitted to this program before and were not funded, they give you an extra page to respond to the previous reviews. So with that said, and then there's the standard, and if you submitted proposals before, you're aware of it. You need your bio sketches, you need a budget and a budget justification, you need a data management plan. What else? Conflict of interest. These are all the standard supplemental documents that have to go with the submission of your proposal. Now, with this in mind, these are our headlines. So that gives us a general structure for the proposal, but we don't really know what to expect us to put in there. What do I write here? They give us a good indication of what the agency and the reviewers expect in their evaluation section. Here are the evaluation criteria, And when you go through it, you see all of a sudden they're talking about things that were not mentioned earlier in the narrative content section. So, for instance, here they talk about under objectives, what exactly you're going to do. They talk about partnerships. Under methods, again, specifics about what are you going to do. But then also, they're looking for a communication plan. So that is something we have to pick up. They're also looking for evaluation of outcomes of your activities. That is also something that we have to address in the narrative. The next part, key personnel and project management. That was not mentioned in that rough outline, but here they say they want clearly definition of roles and responsibilities. They want a timeline with benchmarks. They want identification of key personnel who are collecting data. They want, again, development of strong partnerships with local communities. And they want coordination with other entities working in this area. Then again, we're back to budget and budget justification. That is a standard thing. And they have all these clear requirements for the evaluation of your proposal for each of the project types. With that information in hand, we can start putting together our proposal. And with that, I will stop sharing and hand it back to Angela.
Well, thank you, Christine, for walking us through. But now it's time to get into a little bit more details. She was able to roughly go over where you can find it in the RFP, but let's go into the RFP and extract some information that will be critical to you. Christine, do you want to talk about eligibility?
Eligibility. We mentioned it earlier. Basically, everybody who is not a for-profit company can submit here. That's how I read it. That doesn't mean that you have no questions. You may be on the verge of thinking, I probably don't qualify. If that's the case, please talk to the program managers. They are the most knowledgeable people here. They're extremely helpful, and you can rely on their advice. This is the list of eligibility in terms of who can submit. Now we go to the next slide, Angela, where we talk about what is the target group? Who can we represent here? Who should be our community that we want to help with the program that we're proposing? Angela, you want to take this over?
Yes, and you can find this on page 3 of the RFP, and it clearly states in it, in some bold here, to develop and implement food safety training, education, extension, outreach, and technical assistance that address specific populations, owners and operators of small to medium-sized farms, beginner farms, socio-disadvantaged farmers, veteran farmers, or small fruit and vegetable vendors, wholesalers. So you have to define your population and be clear that you meet this. It also goes on to say the audiences that are affected by food safety guidelines under the Food Safety Modernization Act. So USDA has a whole set of meat and poultry that they regulate, but it specifically says under the Food Safety Modernization Act.
Can I ask a question, Angela?
Yes.
If I represent a group of veteran farmers who produce beef, can I apply?
So the veteran farmers part does directly here, but the beef part doesn't. It is under USDA. But if you have questions, it's always good to go back to the project manager and give them that pitch. We're going to have a whole session on giving that pitch in another webinar series, but going to the project manager and asking that specific question for your audience you want to serve. So when we think about the types of projects, the deadlines and budgets, Christina, you want to talk to us about this?
Yes, the RFA clearly stated there's 4 types of projects that the USDA is funding in this cycle. The community outreach projects, um, they run for 2 years and are awarded $80,000 to $150,000 and maybe more. Angela will talk about the maybe more later. Collaborative education and training projects, they are awarded between 200 and 400,000. Regional centers, they are awarded 800,000, and if they apply for regional lead center, they get another 200,000, and they run for 3 years. Technical assistance projects, they are awarded 75,000 to 150,000 and also qualify for supplemental funding if they meet specific requirements. They run for 3 years.
So what about that extra money there? 150,000 above the listed budget maximum. This is only if you have a significant contribution with one of these schools. And these are typically called our minority serving institutions. This project is funded focused towards minority serving institutions. And our technical assistants were able to get these additional funds. Why? Because our collaborations were seamless. They were overall towards the programmatic success. There was equal contributions among budget that was reflected in our activities and our approach to the project. It was significantly aligned with common goals, equitable, and sharing of responsibilities. What that means is if you want these additional 150,000, whoever who is within this category in 1890, 1994, 1862, Hispanic Serving Institution, HBCU, of such, you need to make sure they have significant input into the grant and outcomes and budget within the grant. So what about that budget justification? Christine, you want to take this away?
Sure. Your R&R budget follows the same rules as any other proposal budget that you submit to any federal funding agency. What's important here in terms of USDA requirements, there is no match required. In other words, you don't have to bring money to the table to play. That's important to you. It makes it easier to get this budget together. You are not prohibited from bringing matching funds, but it will not mean that you are rated higher than the competition. It's not a bonus point. So no match required. That's the important thing for you when you put your budget together. Indirect costs, that's another important thing when it comes to budgets. The USDA limits the indirect cost, the IDC component, to no more than 30% of total federal funds awarded. That is typically less than what your institution of higher education expects you to contribute. But when you put your budget together, you cannot exceed the 30%. That's the rule here. If your institutional IDC rate is lower than that, that's what you should plug in here. Important thing is no more than 30%. Registration requirements. If you work within an institution of higher education, you don't have to worry about it. These registrations and forms have already been submitted. But if you're an NGO or have never submitted to federal funding agencies, you need to register with sam.gov. You need to obtain a unique entity identifier number, and you have to register with grants.gov. If that is the case, if you still need to do it right away, because it can take some time. It's not instantaneous, and you want to make sure you have all that in place once we get to the submission deadline. Documents required for a complete proposal submission are all included in the SF 424 R&R family of forms that starts with a cover sheet, project performance site locations, a project summary for which there is a template, the project narrative, about which we will talk later, personnel profiles, the bio sketches, there's templates for those, budget and a budget justification, a data management plan, and a conflict of interest list. There's also a template for that. How will you submit in February? You will convert all your documents into PDFs and you will submit electronically through grants.gov. There's no other way of submitting this if you want to get funded.
And one key with that is, if this is the first time, make sure that you allow plenty of time to make sure you have those checks and balances and do not have errors, because there is no grace past the 5 p.m. submission time. So you want to try maybe the day before to see if you can get everything into the system.
I have a better advice. Submit 2 days before, because you never know what kind of error pops up and what you have to do to fix it. So give yourself plenty of time. That's good for your heart rate and it's good for your success rate.
Thank you for that.
So
Project.
Now, go, Angela.
So now, you want to go through this or stop sharing?
I'm still sharing?
No.
No. We go through the project narrative and I will probably pop back to the RFA in certain places. But let's start with what we have in terms of where we start with our project narrative. So we extracted from the RFA that all text must be 1.5 lines spaced, must have font size 12. They do not specify the font type, so you can use Times New Roman, whatever you prefer. But my advice is use something that readers are used to. Don't use a very special font that will irritate some people. Use something that they're used to and familiar with. Text and tables and figures can be 11 point. It's all designed to make it easier for reviewers to read it. Margins should be 1 inch all around. All documents should have numbered pages, and all documents must be submitted in PDF format. How do we know that? We didn't see that in the RFA. Well, there is a general guideline from the USDA for the submission of proposals. And everything that's not covered in the RFA is covered in those guidelines. And that's where I pull that from. Next slide. Page limits, that was detailed in the RFA. We have 20 pages for the bigger projects and 10 pages for the smaller projects, plus an extra page if we have to respond to previous reviewer comments. Next. These are the mandatory headlines that were listed in the RFA. We have to have an introduction, rationale and significance, objectives, approach, summary of previous work, and, if applicable, response to previous review. Now, that doesn't give us an awful lot to go from. I mean, I have a headline, but what do I put underneath there? What do reviewers and the funding agency expect to be covered there? To know about that, we have to go back into the RFA and look at the evaluation criteria. And I share my screen. Angela, bear with me. Here we go. It's coming. Share. Do you see it?
Perfect.
Okay. So this is the list of evaluation criteria for each project type. And I will just go through the first one here, the community outreach program, to highlight what reviewers will have in terms of a review matrix in front of them. What are they looking for, and where you can get points, where you can get higher ratings than your competition? Because keep in mind, this is not just for the reviewers to say your project has merit. It's also that you have to compete with a lot of other people who are applying for the same money, and your proposal has to stand out. And the clearer you can address what reviewers are looking for, the better for you, the higher you will be rated, if the merit part of your proposal is in sync with what the USDA wants to fund. So for the community outreach projects, they want to identify and justify specific food safety education and training needs. So we have to talk about that early on. What are we addressing? They want you to leverage partnerships, and they want to see that if you had previous funded community or pilot projects, what were the outcomes? Did you deliver on what was funded previously? Under methods, they want to see that you have specific activities that you will undertake to address traditionally underserved niche audiences. That is something that we have to pick up. They also expect you to have a communication plan, an evaluation plan for your outcomes. They here have a review evaluation criterion on key personnel and project management. That was not mentioned in the narrative content section of the RFA. So you want to clearly define the roles and responsibility of key staff. You want to have a timeline, either a Gantt chart or a work plan. They want to know who's collecting data. They want to know what you're doing to develop partnerships with local communities and how you will coordinate your efforts with others. I will stop sharing now and show you, Angela, if you want to pull up the PowerPoint presentation again, how I use the information that I pulled from the evaluation criteria to develop a more detailed narrative structure. Here we go.
And I want to mention just before that when Christine was going through that RFP, she did not highlight all bullets, but yes, you need to pay attention to every bullet in that evaluation. There was wording in there about making sure that it's consistent with the new Food Safety Modernization Act in there. It asked for details on specific aspects of validation and making sure that you have evaluation. So every bullet you need to make sure your project is. But for time's sake, we're not going through every little detail right now, but you can go back and say that. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. She's absolutely right. This section, although it's very late in the RFA, is one of the most important sections for you to look at when you start developing your narrative. This is where they tell you what they expect in detail. So we're going back to the introduction. There wasn't much that they said in the evaluation plan about the introduction, but in general, for every proposal that you submit, the first couple of pages is where you connect with your reviewers. If you do not, if you lose them, they will not come back. In other words, proposals, grants are won or lost on the first couple of pages. And we will have a special section discussing just how to put a good first page together. Here is how I go about it. First, identify the problem or the issue that you want to address. The issue itself and the population, the stakeholders, the constituents that you want to help with your projects. And then describe why. What is the significance in terms that we relate and reviewers relate to of life, health, and money? What do I mean by that? Example, right now we have an alert out for, I think, cantaloupes that are tainted. Angela, help me. I don't even remember with what, listeria or...
Yes, we're in the midst of an outbreak right now,
okay.
like always. But
there's always
that's a problem that you could address if you're working with cantaloupe producers and niche audiences. That's an example of how there's a significant problem, a history of it, and you can show significance of lives lost and things, statistics.
Yes, and how many people were hospitalized? How much money does that mean in terms of lost wages, lost products, um, healthcare cost? All that is measure for significance of a problem, and make that clear for your reviewers so they don't have to pull that out of their existing knowledge or have to go and Google it. Present it to them on a silver platter. Describe clearly the stakeholders with whom you will work, because the RFA requested that you target specific groups. In just one paragraph, don't go into much detail. Explain how you want to go about it. And then, very important, although not required, prepare a logic model for your project. Reviewers at the USDA are used to these tools that basically explain your whole project on one page. And don't panic, we will have a special session discussing just how to put a meaningful, good logic model together. These 2 pages basically explain everything the reviewers need to know about your project. Next page. Next is rationale and significance. Here you want to explain again in more detail why it is important that you tackle this issue in this population. You will talk about the current status of the field in general and the food safety education that is related to this issue, the impact on the community and stakeholders, the needs that exist for this specific population of producers, and the results and products of your previously funded community projects. Objectives. Here you explain what you want to achieve. List the objectives, what you plan to achieve, and explain how you want to go about it later. Here you just list your objectives that you want to achieve, and also make clear that building partnerships with others that serve the same stakeholders or communities is part of your objectives. So make that extra objectives. Give them numbers. That makes it easier for reviewers who skim through the review process, because they have a ton of these proposals to read. They can identify and go through the rest of your narrative and see what do you do for each specific objectives. Make it easy to follow your structure. Next. Here's the approach. This is where you go into the details. For each objective that you listed earlier, list all specific tasks that you will perform. And again, rather than writing 2, 3, 4 pages of prose, clearly structure. For each objective, objective 1 has task 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Objective 2 has task 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. So make it easy for reviewers to follow along without much effort to, stay focused. They can just look at headlines, basically. And here you want to be specific. What exactly are you going to do? What curriculum modification? How are you going to reach out to greater numbers or new audiences? What kind of new materials are you going to develop? How are you going to develop them? With whom are you going to develop them? Are there new methods of knowledge transfer? What exactly are you going to do? Don't talk about what you want to achieve. That's for the objective. Here you talk about exactly what you're going to do. The other thing, remember the evaluation criteria that should go in here, your communication plan and your evaluation plan. Next. Again, we learned that in the evaluation section. Have a clear description of who is responsible for what. So list the roles and responsibilities. You can add an org chart here. Identify the key personnel who does certain crucial things. I always recommend to create a milestone table. Here are the objectives, the tasks, What are my milestones that indicate that I'm on track? And on the right-hand side is my timeline. And I will provide, we have a special session for that, and I will provide you with examples and with templates for that. Then explain what kind of feedback mechanisms you are building in to make sure that what you do is actually meeting the needs of your constituents, and give them a chance to tell you whether you meet the needs, whether there's something that's not been addressed or not efficiently addressed. So have a mechanism built into your project to adjust if necessary. And then coordination with local partners, that's addressing the building and developing closer relationships with others working with the same constituents. Next, summary of previous work. And here you want to explain what you have done in the past that is relevant to what you're doing here. And if there is a lot of what you've done in the past, you can present it in table format. This here represented everything that you need to do for community outreach projects. The other three project types require slightly different structure of your narrative, and we will provide you with narrative templates for each of the 4 project types. Angela?
So thank you guys for joining us. And just for your information, we will have future webinars talking about that first page, talking about how to do that work or research plan, defining measurable matrix for success. We're going to talk about how to highlight your novelty, your innovation, your uniqueness. Also, that sales pitch or that white paper that you would want to provide to your project manager. How to have meaningful stakeholder engagement, and think about transferability between education, outreach, and extension for a broader impact. We will talk about how to do a meaningful logic model and how to learn from any rejections that you might have gotten from this program or any. And to be announced, but we will also have a special budget and budget justification section that will be provided by Texas Tech University's budgeting office. We also are offering office consultation hours. Now, we are not the reviewers, and we cannot guarantee based on our feedback that you will get this award, but we are here to answer any questions, give you feedback on any written documentation, and we have a Sign Up Genius for days that you can sign up between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Central Standard Time to meet with us and our team. Christine Strom, being with over 20 years of project management, grantmanship, editing experience, we will provide you with feedback. Any written feedback, you will have to give us at least 3 business days to provide feedback back. So we want to thank you for joining us today on this webinar. Have a wonderful day.